Reality is right now, he does a bit of everything, but when you watch him, you watched him at Duke. What I was most impressed with is he does a lot of things, not just like he doesn't just do a lot of things, he does a lot of things that impact winning.
Right.
Like he can make 4 or 5 different plays in a game that help your team, but each play is a little different. One's a basket, another's a block, another's an extra effort defensively that creates a bad shot. There's just so many ways that he can impact a game. Now, I think with age and experience, if he progresses into what certainly the Dallas Mavericks hope he's going to be, it's going to be finding an offensive game. And it's not just, you can't look at it and just say, hey, he can shoot, he can dribble, he can attack the basket. What an offensive game is at the NBA level is you have very specific skills, very specific spots that you get to on the floor, and you create havoc for people.
The word about Cooper is that Carmelo Anthony came out a couple of days ago and was saying how Cooper Flag doesn't do anything especially well, like he doesn't have a particular skill, and that may hurt him down the line. But you have a lot of other people saying that he does a little bit of everything well, and that's the thing. So and that's kind of what you want in a basketball player. He's going to come in and be a defensive first minded guy, be a playmaker, and grow into his offensive role. What do you say to that?
Well, I think that's the trajectory that people think. The reality is right now, he does a bit of everything, but when you watch him, you watched him at Duke. What I was most impressed with is he does a lot of things, not just like he doesn't just do a lot of things. He does a lot of things that impact winning.
Right.
Like he can make 4 or 5 different plays in a game that help your team, but each play is a little different. One's a basket, another's a block, another's an extra effort defensively that creates a bad shot. There's just so many ways that he can impact a game. Now, I think with age and experience, if he progresses into what certainly the Dallas Mavericks hope he's going to be, it's going to be finding an offensive game. And it's not just, you can't look at it and just say, hey, he can shoot, he can dribble, he can attack the basket. What an offensive game is at the NBA level is you have very specific skills, very specific spots that you get to on the floor, and you create havoc for people.
Yeah.
Because you're going to get to those spots, or you're going to have counters to get to your alternative spots, and you're going to play at a level of efficiency that is just not going to be stopped. It can only hope to be contained, or maybe you have a bad night of missing shots. But every high-level player in the league, has an offensive game where they get to certain places and they hit certain types of shots. And he's just not at that place yet. But it doesn't mean he won't get there. To me, the biggest thing that was a little concerning about Flag was when he measured at like 6'8". I thought he was advertised as 6'10", and it's not unusual for people to measure out shorter than they are. But what that is to me is like there's nothing necessarily physically exceptional about him. It's going to have to be the skill and the effort that's going to do that. You look at a guy like KD, and he's, probably 7 foot instead of 6'10", and he has a and there's just certain things like freakishly that he can do, or Giannis or whatever. Flag's, or the guy last year, Wemby. Flag is not falling into that category of genetic freak. He's falling into a category where he's, good athletically and has tools, but there's nothing that stands out like that makes him just unplayable for most guys. And I think that the refinement of his skill, the development of an offensive game, as I just defined it, are going to be the deciding factors on his level of stardom.
No, 100%. Now, I've seen some Kawhi Leonard NBA Pro comps for Cooper Flag. And that's interesting because it took Kawhi a few years to develop his offensive game.
Yeah.
And he became exceptional at that. So it can be done. You know what I mean? So we'll see what he grows into. And we'll come back to that because I had a question about number one draft picks in the past few years. And I want to compare Cooper to those guys. But right now, my favorite team is on the clock. We'll also come back to the Spurs and the fit with Dylan Harper. But let's try to catch up here as we go along. The number 3 pick, 76ers on the clock. We have a lot of options. I heard some phenomenal things earlier today that could be done as far as like trading Paul George and moving back. That really gave me pure excitement. But it's just a rumor, and it's 30 seconds to go here before they pick. And it looks like for right now, it looks like they're going to keep the pick. Now, you know how the draft works. I mean, they can pick a player here
and they're actually picking for a guy. You know what I mean? They're picking a guy now that's really already part of a trade potentially. Yeah, that could work out.
It could do that, but so it'll be interesting. It'll be interesting to see what they do here in a few seconds. Now, Ace Bailey wouldn't meet with us. Canceled the meeting. Not only would he not meet or work out with us, he scheduled it and then canceled it. And then decided he wasn't going to meet or work out for anybody, which was extremely weird.
Maybe he had a good threesome going on.
And apparently what everyone is saying that he has a promise from one of the teams that are 6, 7, 8. He really wants to play with the Washington Wizards or
for real?
Yeah, he wants to play with Washington as his number 1 team.
He loves losing. He goes to fucking Rutgers and then he wants to play for the Wizards.
He wants the ball in his hand. He wants to be able to just shoot as
and he wants
times.
A lot of L's on his head.
Yeah.
That's insane to me. That is I didn't hear that. That is ludicrous.
Yeah, that's why he canceled the meeting. Yeah.
That's ludicrous.
They think that him and his camp think that that's his avenue to stardom. And I'm glad because that kind of shows what he is, and also shows why he went to Rutgers. He's to get the bad guy, so he wants to run the numbers up, scored 20 points a game on a bad team, and hopefully get him a rookie max extension. So and that's cool, but that's just not what Philly needs. We've had enough of that. We've had enough of guys to fool us and get the bag. So.
Yeah, and he's a guy. He was apparently advertised as 6'10" and is 6'7.5".
Yeah.
And again, I was reading a thing. At 6'10", you're like KD comparisons and that sort of stuff. 6'7.5", you're just another fucking guy.
Literally, another guy who takes a ton of bad shots, doesn't care, about winning and all of that stuff. So.
That's really, so yeah. If he really wants that badly to play with the Wizards because they'll put the ball in his hands, that makes sense why he would not mess with Philadelphia, with Embiid, with Paul George for that matter.
He doesn't even want Charlotte, and because Charlotte has LaMelo and B Miller, so that's interesting as well. So. So VJ Edgecombe is a guy who did meet with us. Tyrese Maxey was at that meeting, and he's a guy who has a lot of athletic ability. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Very athletic, but he scares us to death. He scares 76ers fans to death because he reminds us of the guy that we just drafted a couple of years ago, very high, traded him on draft day. Okay, for we drafted the guy with the New York Knicks, Bridges, and we traded him on draft night for a guy who's no longer in the NBA.
Yeah,
he has the same. No, he has the same player profile. Just an athletic guy, who can't dribble or shoot that well just yet, and that's what But there's some pro comps to Oladipo. To even Jimmy Butler for Edgecombe as far as his college profile here. So
I think Edgecombe's a better player. I liked him in the tournament. I thought he's got some real upper tier athleticism, but I think he'd play. I don't think he's just an idiot running around.
And the pick is in, and the 76ers did go with VJ Edgecombe.
Okay. So
with VJ Edgecombe being the pick, I don't think that any trade scenarios are on the ticker here for that. I mean, he's the only guy that we brought in, that interviewed and worked out.
He's the only guy that they brought in at all?
That interviewed and worked out. Now, they may have spoken with, like, Trey and a couple of other guys.
Okay.
But as far as the whole 9, yes, BJ Edgecombe was the only guy. So they really targeted him. And, we'll see. Now, he's a guard. He's really a guard. He's 6'4". And we have Tyrese Maxey, and
you have Jared McCain.
We have Jared McCain, and for what it's worth, we have a guy that we're trying to bring back in free agency that's a guard as well. So
who's that?
Oh man, There's so many guys off the top of my head. I can't remember off the top of my head. But we'll see what VJ can do. Hold on here, cause I'm really going crazy here. Free agency. We're trying to sign Quentin Grimes. I don't know why I can think of his name.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, Quentin Grimes. We're trying to sign him back. He did really well last season. So we'll see, man.
Got into it with Georges Niang.
Yeah, Niang was
if you get into it with Georges Niang, you're on the right side of history.
He was like, you're only doing that because nobody's there.
Nobody's playing, which was a good comeback at the time. Now we'll see, like in the coming years, is he really that guy or was George Wright?
But the positive thing about VJ, he plays hard, he plays defense. You know what I mean? And when you see guys. We just saw the finals with OKC and the Pacers. I mean, he looks like a guy that can come in early and be a rotational guy that can come in, get you some extra possessions, you know what I mean, and just fly around out there versus an ace who is just going to take a bunch of tough mid-range shots.
Yeah.
Now,
if he molds himself as just a hard-playing two-way guy with upper-tier athleticism, I think this is a really good pick.
Yeah. Now, Charlotte is on the clock, okay? This is an interesting team because they're young and they haven't had any success with this current, version of their team.
They're young, dumb, and full of cum.
LaMelo gets hurt a lot, but he's there. Brandon Miller got hurt for a long stretch last year, but he showed some promise. And I just don't know what else, where do you go here? Do you go with the big? It seems like it's too early for Duke center. Do you need some shooting? Do you go Trey Johnson from Texas?
Didn't they still have Mark Williams?
Yeah, but Mark is another guy who's, he had a bad physical with the Lakers. Yeah. I mean, he gets injured a ton. You kind of need anything outside of, outside of a point guard. I mean, really. So it'd be interesting to see where they go.
I don't think it's that interesting, and I don't think it matters because I think that organization is just so bad that whoever goes there is just it's gonna be a stain on their career.
Mm. You don't see any turnaround with Charlotte?
No. I think at the end of the day, Melo's an ass clown, and you're not going to overcome that. He's been in the league long enough. He can play. I mean, he could do some great stuff. But I just think that he's just not a serious guy. He's not about winning. And and as long as he's the front man of your operation, you're not going to go very far. And if I'm a top, if I'm a 4 to 9 player right now, I don't want any part of this. I would have refused their interview. I would have mailed them a brown bag full of shit to just not have to go there.
Most of the time, bad teams are drafting high anyway.
No, I understand, but again, look at what this team is. Melo is a mess because he's good enough. The ball's going to be in his hands, and it should be in his hands, but he's not a serious person. Yeah. And so he's your lead of the franchise, and he's not a serious. You can't get better with him. And so if I'm going to go there, I'm going to watch Melo dribble around and throw bad passes at his leisure, not my convenience. And we're not going to win a bunch of games. And what am I going to do there?
Yeah.
I literally think it's one of the worst places you could go as a rookie.
And I think the worst fit for them would be Trey Johnson from Texas. He's a shooter. He's a gunner, man. He's going to get him up, and you know what I mean. And that fits Melo's style. But I think they needed it. I think they should have moved up and got a guy like VJ. They need a change in culture. You know what I mean? They need a change in everything.
But I think that's the thing is nobody in this draft. Nobody available at 4, and how pathetic. At 4 is a good pick. Nobody available is what they need.
Yeah.
Because they're that far off of the pace.
Yeah, that sucks.
And the problem, you can have a culture-changing guy, but, he can't be 4 years younger than Melo.
Yeah.
And the guy who's going to have the ball in his hands and change culture, that's not happening.
No.
You have a guy that is not a serious guy heading into the prime years of his basketball life, and and he's going to have the ball. You're stuck.
Yeah.
Unless you unstick yourself from him.
Now, while we wait on this pick, and we'll announce it when it does come in. Now, there should be any second though. Now, I'm waiting on it. He's walking up to the podium now, but I wanted to talk a little bit about the Spurs pick since we missed that. What's up, Just Black? I see you there. I want to talk a little bit about the Spurs pick because even though that Dylan Harper it was clearly a two-player draft, is what everyone said. Cooper Flag, Dylan Harper. Dylan Harper is a point guard, and they just already have so many guards. You know what I mean? They already they have the Rookie of the Year. Castle. They have the guard that came over from Sacramento. Okay, and De'Aaron Fox. I just what do you do with a Dylan Harper when you roll out the ball next fall?
Yeah. You it is tough. I mean, at the end of the day, though, and I think the Spurs have done a great job of this history. They're drafting people more than players. And I think that's the route that this group is going. Castle's a very solid dude. Wemby seems to be about all the right things. I think De'Aaron Fox is about the right things. And I think they're just stockpiling dudes that have the right mentality over positional fit. And I think that at the end of the day, it gives you a chance to kind of bring Harper up a little slower maybe and not need as much from him and let him kind of grow into a role. And I'm not bothered by it. It's not ideal. You'd love for Harper to fit a position they don't have, good talent at. But I'm okay with taking winning dudes, taking dudes that you think are high character guys. And Harper's dad was an NBA great championship guy. I don't think he's been one of those guys that is steps into this and understands how to operate as an NBA guy. And I think he'll be fine. And I think the Spurs will be better for having these types of people.
Yeah, I'm not sure about it, man.
I can tell. I can feel your trepidation across the table.
Yeah, because if a guy can't get on the court, it's going to be hard for him to develop. That's the issue that I think I have there.
I don't see where he's not going to get on the court. I think he'll get on the court. I think they're going to. They wouldn't have made this pick if they didn't have a plan to get him meaningful minutes.
Now, Charlotte ended up going with Con Knuppel, man. That's very interesting. Now, Con is a guy who 6'7" forward, who is really, shooting and passing really are his two main skills there. Really really good at those things. But you kind of want him in a point forward type of role. And of course, with LaMelo having the ball in his hands all the time, I don't think that's going to happen. But another guy you can run offense through is important. That's good. But moves his feet very slow laterally on a defensive end. He won't be able to guard anyone in the NBA. But young players coming in, how much defense are they really playing? What do you think about this pick here for Charlotte? I mean, I know you said anybody who goes there, but Con is a very interesting person for them to pick because he was a guy slated for later in the lottery.
Yeah, no, I don't like this pick at all. I mean, I don't walk back from what I said. I don't like anybody going to Charlotte right now, but I don't see a lot in Con Knuppel. I know he can shoot. There's a ton of guys that come in the league as shooters, and because they can't do enough of the other stuff, they end up in very limited roles. And to me, unless you're gonna kind of go down that JJ Redick path where you just kind of are super fit and kind of get good enough at other stuff that you're not a liability, that you can play meaningful minutes and so forth.
I see a bigger Austin Reeves. And I hate to do the white guy comparison, but that's really what he reminds me of, a bigger Austin Reeves. Because Austin, he has some on-ball juice, and he's done it for a couple of years now to where it's believable. But very poor defensively, and but because of his ability to his passing vision and being able to shoot the ball, he can go through stretches of minutes on the court and can initiate offense through him. And that's what I see in Khan. And he's bigger for what it's worth.
But like you said, like Austin Reeves didn't go 4 in the draft.
No.
And that's why I mean, like aside from the Charlotte point, I don't like Con Knipple going 4 if that's our comparison. And I don't strongly disagree with your take.
Yeah.
I think I think this in a good setting, that's what he becomes.
Yeah, in a good
I
setting.
don't know that he has much potential to be beyond a good Austin Reeves.
Yeah. I don't know if Austin Reeves is Austin Reeves if he's in Charlotte.
Right, and the reality is it goes it's both ways on that.
Yeah,
and it's like, but this is the guy that's going 4. So I'm not excited, for him, and I'm not excited about him at 4. If he's getting taken near the end of the lottery, I would be more excited, about him as a prospect.
Yeah.
But 4, to me, there's good expectations in 4. You're wanting to pick a player that you could think could be an all-star.
Yeah.
And I don't know that's what this pick is.
No, that's for sure. That's for sure.